Rabbit Hole Roundup, episode 100, 100th episode special. So guys, we made it to 100, and I appreciate every single one of you who's come along for the journey on this page as well as the Jared and James channel. And something that's actually really cool is that this also coincides with hitting 1,000 followers on this TikTok page too, or at least within the past week. So this is of course evidence that when you refuse to quit, life rewards you in the end. Now in today's episode, I want to go back to the origins of this channel.
Flashback.
And tell you guys the story of how this channel and concept came to be, as well as what it's evolved into, because I don't think that a lot of my current followers know the whole story behind this page and behind this channel. So I think you guys are going to find that pretty interesting. Then speaking of 100, I have a clip coming from soon-to-be 100-year-old Dyke on how he's gotten to this point while still feeling pretty good and not being in any pain. After that, I have a clip coming from Kirk Cousins, one of my favorite quarterbacks, where he talks about not using people to get to the top, and this of course aligns with me not using my listeners, and always giving my absolute all and giving my best in an effort to try to help people versus the people who manipulate others or use them for selfish and nefarious interests, which has never been me.
You like that? You like that?
After that, I have an Hormozi clip that actually fits perfectly, where he says how if most people knew the amount of volume and time it took to be successful as well as the overall repetition, most people will probably never even start. And following that, to close up this episode, I have this week's sports recap, NFL Week 14, as well as NBA talk. So anyways, without further ado, let's dive deeper now. 100th episode time, let's go.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jared Weiss. If you guys didn't know that by now, it must mean that you're not subscribed to the channel, so you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on the video. Follow me on every platform, and if you guys haven't done so already, make sure to check out my book, Fight Through It by Jared Weiss. All links to purchase it are on my website, which is jaredryanweiss.com. That's JEREDRYANWEISS.com. Buy the book, support me, and make sure to check out all the awesome shirts in there as well. Every shirt has been designed by me, every shirt is made of 100% organic cotton, so any support at all, as I'm always saying, will be very much appreciated. So let's dive deeper into this 100th episode now. So now that we made it to episode 100, I think now is actually a really good time to circle back to the origin story behind the Rabbit Hole Roundup.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Especially because it's occurred to me that a lot of you guys, a lot of my current followers, don't know how this channel started and the evolution of the concept. So first off, I want to pat myself on the back a little bit, because between this channel and the Jared and James channel, I have over 300 episodes and 300 videos total. And while I know that stats show that most podcasts don't make it past episode 3, and fewer get to 10, and most are never going to make it to 100 plus, so I really appreciate any and all of you who've come along for the ride, as once again this also coincides with this TikTok page hitting 1,000 followers last week too. Anyways, story time. So initially all I had was the Jared and James channel alongside my best friend James, but of course in recent years I basically made every video on my own. Of course James is still really supportive of me, but he doesn't want to be on camera really. But anyways, that channel also didn't start off as a podcast either, but slowly evolved into such. So after appearing on a few other podcasts, I tried out one podcast episode with one of my friends, and I really loved it. And so in spite of my speech and health challenges, I really felt called to do this. And one of my favorite parts about having a social media platform is that I'm someone who has various interests. And I never want to limit myself to just one thing. I mean, I'm an athlete, I'm a motivational speaker, I'm a sports commentator, nutrition coach, life coach, positivity expert, etc., etc. And so this is actually the perfect thing for me.
Or a football playing king in space.
So one day I run into someone from my gym who I knew of, RJ. I didn't actually know him personally, but both of us had actually recently appeared on another podcast, separately of course. So we get into talking, and at this time I was getting into a lot of conspiracies as well as hard truth talks, which of course I'm going to explain more about the current evolution in a bit. Anyways, RJ is a tremendous calisthenics athlete, and someone who's also big on questioning everything as well, and me and him were totally on the same page when it came to conspiracies too. So I invited him to come on the podcast, and we had my longest episode to date, as we talked for almost 3 hours, and between conspiracies, spirituality, as well as human performance, we had a ton to say to each other. Anyways, a few days later, I get a call from RJ, saying that he felt a call from his higher self, telling him that he should start up a podcast with me. Now initially, I was a bit hesitant, because I'm someone who likes doing things a certain way and doesn't like relying on others. But after I thought about it for a bit, I agreed to do it, but I wanted to keep everything on the Jared and James channel, because I felt like it was going to be way too much to operate 2 different pages. So we basically made it into like a sub-podcast on the Jared and James channel. And we had a ton of fun doing it. And we actually had like some viral clips, and still some of my most popular ones to date. Also, we actually had some pretty big guests on too. However, this only lasted maybe about like 7 months, maybe a bit more, maybe less, I'm not sure exactly. But we definitely had a good run. And then he tells me like he has too much going on with his son as well as like work-wise. And sadly, he wasn't going to be able to do it anymore.
No! God, please, no! No!
But I didn't want to just give this whole thing up. So I thought to myself, how do I keep this going as like a solo project? So the next several episodes kept on the same concept, where I was pulling up news stories or interesting conspiracy theories that like I came across, and I would speak about what I believe to be the truth from these topics. Being someone who listens to a lot of Sam Tripoli and like his tinfoil hat episodes, I loved how I felt whenever I listened to him and felt empowered by this knowledge, or some like hidden secret knowledge that like most people weren't aware of. And as always, everything I did was always done with the best of intentions, and to help people realize their true potential. And of course, I was always trying my best like to put a positive spin on everything, even when it came to the darkest stories. However, a few things started to happen. First, several of my clips would get taken down, or I was also getting like heavily shadow banned. So after a ton of frustration, my dad basically helped me realize that like I was fighting up against a wall. So I may as well like adapt, and as he suggested, start up a separate page for all the Rabbit Hole Roundup stuff. So I gave in and did that, and the first few episodes were of course similar concepts, but then I reached a point where I felt like I had done what I wanted to with all the conspiracy stuff, and I still have most of the same beliefs to this day. But I realized like if I were to keep going with that, I'd almost be looking for things that weren't actually there, and I would be searching for ways that like we're being oppressed totally, and like I don't really feel that way. Plus also like it occurred to me like within the past year, so much, but like not all the conspiracy people have become like more negative and become more hateful, and will call everyone who disagrees with any of their theories sheep, as opposed to allowing everyone like to critically think for themselves. And of course some pages are still great, I believe, but I didn't like how toxic some of these people and like how some of the overall community was becoming.
I got a lot of problems with you people!
Where everyone had to believe the same exact theories. And I'm an extremely optimistic person, and someone who likes to spread positivity as well as like good news, and help inspire people to believe in themselves. I don't and have never believed in the whole black pill of the people who say like life sucks and they're doing this to us, and of course I see all the ways like they try to get us not to believe in our own power, and how all of us are divinely created, but I don't find it to be constructive to stay at like this low fear-based vibration. So then it occurred to me that like maybe this is my new higher calling, which is while everyone else is saying how bad life is and like focusing on all the mainstream news stories, and for the people who are acting like you can't change it, I thought why not be the optimist and bring people happy news and positivity, because of course that's like what I've always done best. And of course, if something comes up that's like health related, as I am still a big believer in holistic health, and if and when I do feel the need to speak out against something, I'm not going to hesitate to do it, but fighting with people over whether or not like a conspiracy is true isn't going to change their minds, and honestly won't be helping most people. So once again, I did my job, I thought, and all those videos are still up there for any of you who want to watch them, and I do still hold most of those beliefs, but I slowly shifted the focus of the page into finding the most positive TikToks and Instagram posts, and to highlight these in my episodes, and in doing so I felt good knowing that like I was putting smiles on people's faces, which has always been my goal from the start. Then I tried out talking some sports for a bit, and these became some of my most popular clips. And I've always been a lifelong athlete, as well as overall sports fan, so I was like, I can totally do this, and I love it. Plus, I could be the positive sports guy, as opposed to that clickbait hater. I also started talking about music and movies, as well as like some fun pop culture topics, as a way of incorporating all my various interests. And that's basically where we're at with the Rabbit Hole Roundup now, at episode 100. It almost reminds me a bit of like Monsters Inc. with how they started off running on scream power, but what they realized is that laughs are more powerful.
And the fact that laughter is 10 times more powerful than scream had nothing to do with it.
So I started off with like the most shocking conspiracies, and once again, it's not like I don't believe a lot of those same things, and I will still talk about that wherever I feel appropriate. And also, once again, my intention was always to empower people, but while everyone else out there is focusing on the bad and the negative, why can't I be the one to show people the good in the world and highlight that? Because I see that as my way of being the change that I wish to see in the world. Anyways, I'm sure like there's probably more that I could go into, But that's basically the origin story of this channel that most of you probably didn't really know about. And I truly, honestly appreciate all you guys for supporting me in my social media and any of my journeys in any way. It means the world to me. Now next up, for this 100th episode special, I want to talk about a clip coming from Dick Van Dyke, who just so happens to be turning 100 years old in the next few days.
I feel really good. But for 100, you know, but I really don't, I have no pain, no discomfort. People say, what did you do right? And I say, don't ask. I don't know. I'm rather lazy, and I think, I've always thought that anger is one thing that eats up a person's insides, and hate. And I never really was able to work up a feeling of hate. You know, the things I don't like, people I don't like and disapprove of, but I never really was able to do a white heat kind of hate. And my father was a person who was constantly upset by the state of things in his life and everything. And it did take him at 74 years old. I think that is one of the chief things that kept me going.
So I think that's a really powerful point. I definitely don't underestimate what he's saying about how not living with hate has not only allowed him to live to 100, but to have no pain at 100 years old too. What do we always hear? Too much stress is going to kill you eventually, so let that anger and hate go.
It's not your fault.
Whenever you harbor hate or anger, and this is why I'm always talking about feeling your emotions in order to heal them, because when you suppress them, they end up going under the rug and turn into and fester into hate and anger.
Right after you eat this!
So this whole outdated concept of men aren't allowed to have feelings, where the having feelings and having emotions makes you weak, I would actually say the opposite is true. I've always been a highly sensitive person, but growing up I thought of this as a weakness. But now I can clearly see this as an ultimate strength of mine. I get to feel everything as it's supposed to be felt, and so when people are always asking me how I'm able to be so optimistic and positive all the time, in spite of having gone through these crazy health challenges, I think that's a huge reason why. I don't suppress, and I'm very in touch with my body and how things make me feel, and this has also been enhanced on my holistic healing journey too. I'm able to be in touch with what my body needs, how people make me feel, how foods make me feel, etc. But when you deny your feelings, it's as they say, your body starts with a whisper and then turns into a scream. And this isn't just physically, but mentally too. Now some other things that Dick Van Dyke has done that I believe have helped him get to 100, and things that have kept him going, are he sings and dances all the time, still. As he actually spoke about in the rest of this interview. He's still super sharp mentally, and I know he goes to the gym 3 times a week too. When you stop moving, you start dying. So stop using age as an excuse where you think just because it's so common for people as they get older to stop moving, this doesn't mean that this is what you should do, unless you want to end up like a vegetable. So best of luck as he reaches 100. I hope he keeps up, as he's a true Renaissance man and one of the best actors of all time. Moving ahead, I have a clip coming from Kirk Cousins, quarterback of the Falcons, where he talks about not using people to get to the top.
Don't use people to advance your position. You use the position you have to advance people. And so I think the opportunity to use an increased position to help build people around me is what I enjoy doing and what I'll do long after I'm done playing football. And so when I look at my teammates, coaches, not saying that it's my job to do that, but just knowing that you have an opportunity to help all together kind of build something, I think that's what you get excited about, is that part of it.
So this is a great message coming from one of my favorite quarterbacks who's always been a class act as well. Believe it or not, there's plenty of people out there who will only be friends with you or who will treat you differently based on what they can get out of you. These of course are known as fair weather friends. I've known people in the past who will treat you differently based on your test scores or based on how many points you're scoring. Or of course a big one is how much money you have, how many followers you have, etc.
Of course not. I'm filthy stinking rich.
These aren't only fair weather friends, but they're also fake people who will ultimately reveal their intentions to you. And once this becomes clear, do yourself a favor and get rid of them, or at the very least keep a safe distance from them. And the reason why I wanted to use this clip as part of the 100th episode special is because when it comes to having a social media platform, and that's someone who's trying to build a following, I don't take these things lightly. And I don't take any of my followers for granted, whether a post or video gets just 1 like or 2 likes, or if it gets 100 or thousands. I've never sold out just for the views, and you can be confident every message and every video I give has come from the heart, and it's all being done with the best of intentions. I'm always trying to help inspire people, or entertain them in fun ways sometimes, or show people something positive. But you will never hear me say something like I don't genuinely believe. You may not always agree with everything I say, but I will never be someone who uses my followers or platform the fake way as I see it, which is like monetizing people's attention. And yes, of course, maybe this is like part of the reason why it's taking me so long to grow, because I don't just follow the trends, and like I don't just say controversial things for the sake of getting more views. But as I always emphasize, I'm going to get there the right way, not just the fast way. And I'm in this for the long haul, not to use people or like to see you guys as pawns in my elaborate scheme to the top. I'm in this to inspire and help people, and to ultimately change lives for the better. Now finally, before we get into this week's sports recap, I have a very fitting clip coming from Alex Hormozi, where he says like, if you knew how much repetition and volume it took, you probably would never even begin.
If people really knew how much volume and repetition it took, they wouldn't begin. And so I don't even think it's a bad thing that people don't understand. Because like if you really saw how far away the goalpost was, you'd be like, I can't do it. Because you can't do it. You couldn't even comprehend that because you're so far away from that type of person or that level of entrepreneur who'd be able to do it that it seems unfathomable. You think it's a couple steps ahead of where you are, and then you get a little bit better, and then you realize it's actually this much further, but then you get a little bit better, and then you realize it's this much further. And then eventually you start to realize, like when you look back at how much you did in order to get there, and then you're like, oh.
Now once again, I chose this clip for a specific reason as part of the 100th episode. So first off, on my JarBryce817 account on TikTok, it took me 4.5 years of posting content every day and multiple times most days to reach 1,000 followers, and almost 2 years of like the same thing on the Rabbit Hole Roundup channel, TikTok, to reach 1,000 followers there too. And also this year I reached 2,000 plus subs on YouTube and 500 plus on the other one, while having made content for 5+ years now. And also I'm someone who's been healing from a life-threatening illness and has been dealing with massive speech challenges too, and yet I've done it. I've been posting consistently for years now, and now I'm finally reaching some cool milestones. Even though like I haven't made it yet, I'm still proud of everything I've accomplished. And as I'm always saying, measuring progress goes beyond just the numbers. And if you're one of the people who want to say like, oh, what's 1,000 followers? My brother or cousin has done that like after just like one post. Well, first off, I legit started from the bottom. I wasn't one of these high school kids who told all my friends to follow me and beg them to like every single post I made. I maybe had 10 to 15 people who followed me from the start, who knew me, while the rest have been built up slowly but like authentically, and only as a result of my persistence. And the fact like it wasn't done with just 1 or 2 viral posts is evidence to me that like you guys actually resonate with my message, versus just like the overnight success situation. So as Alex said, if most people knew like how long it would take to reach this point, how many would even try? This is why most people find it easier to take the safe route and just laugh at the people who are going after their dreams, not realizing that like, the people who they are laughing at are the ones who are one day going to become the same people who they currently look up to and idolize. So many people out there don't have the level of persistence and grit that's required to make their wildest dreams a reality. Plus also society does like a pretty good number on making them think that, like the big goals are reserved for just like a select few people. And of course maybe they are, but just like not for the reasons that you think. But I know from all my journeys that it takes a long time and a ton of failure and a ton of ego hits along the way to reach the mountaintop that I'm hoping to reach. And as I spoke about earlier, most podcasts don't make it past episode 3, let alone 10 or 100. So if you just have enough persistence and go for long enough, you're already like outlasting most people who would never make it that far. And eventually it's going to turn into some level of success, I believe. Anyways, on to this week's sports recap now. So now, I want to start this NFL talk with some talk about like the rookie quarterbacks and who the best one actually is in my opinion. So let's start with the Titans beating the Browns 31-28. So on the Browns said this was probably Shedeur Sanders' best game yet. He made a great throw to Jerry Jeudy that was deep. He also had a nice touchdown pass to David Njoku, some solid throws to Fanning, as well as like a bunch of screen passes to Quinshon Judkins. Now I will say like if we're looking at the totality of the game, he did also throw a bad interception, but of course that's normal for rookies. And also up until that final drive, he did have like a rough completion percentage. At one point I think he was like 14 of 31. And also I didn't like Stefanski taking the ball out of his hands on that final 2-point conversion that got totally botched. So in that situation, I am actually with the whole Shedeur stands. So of course he had over 300 yards passing and 4 total touchdowns in this game. Overall a really good game, but I also don't want to get into the whole overreaction of hand your franchise over this guy, call him a Hall of Famer already, he's the best. I mean, once again, this was against the Titans. Now, I do believe and have believed it from the start, like, talent-wise, this guy is deserving. He's definitely an NFL caliber player, talent-wise. To what extent, of course, that remains to be seen, and how long he actually lasts, I think is going to be determined by, in large part, his ability to lead a team. Anyways, on the other side, although not as flashy stat-wise, Cam Ward actually had, like, a pretty solid game, I thought. He had 2 touchdown passes of his own, and also, of course, like, he was going up against a much tougher defense in the Browns defense, who just so happened to have, like, the best defensive player in all of football, Myles Garrett. Tony Pollard had a big game, and, like, the Titans got the win. Anyways, now I want to talk about who I think has actually been, like, the most impressive rookie quarterback so far this year. So it's not Shedeur Sanders, it's not Cam Ward, but it's actually Tyler Shough, I think. And I wasn't even, like, aware of how good this guy was until, like, a few weeks ago I saw on Twitter. I saw, like, some other guys pointing it out. And if we're looking at, like, the difficulty of his throws that he's making, and the runs that he's getting, he's playing at, like, super elite level. And it may not always show up on the stat sheet, but first off, he just beat the Bucs and had 2 massive running touchdowns, and he actually outplayed Baker Mayfield. I know that a lot of people out there were making fun of the Saints when they drafted him in the 2nd round, but he's making all those people start to eat their words. Of course he's older, but like, I do think he's also way more polished and like he's ready. I think the Saints have a good one in him, and definitely have something to build off of between him and Olave. Then some other big news from this week. I'll start with the Colts losing to the Jaguars, and also like Daniel Jones going down with an Achilles injury, which sucks for him. After the incredible start like he and the Colts had to this season, it may be falling apart at the seams right now, and the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence have actually looked way better recently. Lawrence threw for 244 and had 2 passing touchdowns, and Travis Etienne also had like 2 rushing touchdowns in this one too. But if the reports are true, the Colts are currently working at Phillip Rivers, 44-year-old, to possibly play, or maybe even like back up Riley Leonard. You know me, like, and how much I love all the veterans. So as shocked as I am, like, and unlikely as this whole thing seems, I would love to see it happen, and like, I would love to see Phillip Rivers come back as a grandpa and like dominate the NFL. At the very least, it would be like a really cool story, I think. So I'm hoping it happens by the end of today, maybe even. Anyways, the Jags got the win 36-19, and sit in first place alone in that division, with the Colts suddenly reeling and searching for answers. The Steelers got a massive win over the Ravens, 27-22. Now the Ravens did get screwed over like probably 3 times in this game by the refs, where there was the should have been touchdown by Isaiah Likely, which I still don't know like how the refs reviewed that and then called it a no touchdown, or there was also the late penalty call. Anyways, Aaron Rodgers played a phenomenal game in this one, and he looked cool, calm, and collected, and he even had a rushing touchdown too. And his connection with DK Metcalf was super strong in this one, as Metcalf had 7 catches for 148 yards in this game, as the Steelers take possession of first place in that division, and the whole Mike Tomlin should be fired rumblings have quieted down, for now at least. Lamar Jackson did play better in this one, at least compared to like how he has been, but I'm still not sure like how healthy he looks, cause like it still seems to me like his speed and his change of direction might be slightly off right now. I still think he's playing through an injury. Further, in that division, although like it was a long shot, the Bengals and Joe Burrow went to Buffalo in the snow, and came so close to pulling off that upset. Joe Burrow had 4 passing touchdowns, 2 of them to T. Higgins, be it 2 costly late game picks including a pick 6, destroyed the Bengals' chances of the upset win. And so it wasn't quite enough as Josh Allen became Superman for the Bills once again. He had 4 total touchdowns, like and over 300 total yards in this one, and he reminded us of why he was the MVP last year. In another game that had massive playoff implications, the Lions beat the Cowboys 44-30, and so much for the whole improved Dallas defense. I've been saying it recently how like a good team in both conferences is gonna have to miss out on the playoffs, and like right now it could be Dallas. Although having said that, like Philly's been struggling in that division too. George Pickens, of course, took a lot of the blame in this one for seemingly not giving a full effort, as well as just like looking overall disinterested, despite having been so good up to this point in the season. The Lions stayed alive as Gibbs had yet another 3 rushing touchdowns in this one, and Goff threw for 309 and had a touchdown pass too, and the Lions are still in the playoff hunt at 8-5 right now. Also in that division, my favorite team, the Green Bay Packers, got a massive win over the Bears, who had been so hot up to this point. And I think this basically lines up with everything like I've been saying about the Packers all season, which is that like that team can play to the level of their competition. So they can play with all the best teams in the league, and can be one of them, but also sometimes play down to their level too. Now Jordan Love looked outstanding in this one, especially in that first half. He had 3 passing touchdowns in this game, 2 of them were to Christian Watson, who's been playing great ever since he came back from his injury. For the Bears, Caleb Williams had a super rough start in this one, but he almost did like lead the late game comeback. However, the Packers D shut the door and came up and came up with like a pick in the end zone. Hopefully this level of play continues on both sides of the ball for the Packers. The Dolphins destroyed the Jets, and while it seemed crazy a few weeks ago, if the Dolphins do run the table, they could actually make things interesting in the whole playoff picture, as that team is currently 6-7. The Vikings destroyed the Commanders 31-0, and JJ McCarthy actually looked really good in this one. All I'm saying is like maybe it's time like to pump the brakes and rushing to conclusions on players after just like a few bad games. All I'm saying is whether good or bad, it's almost impossible like to determine how good a player is just based on one season or just based on like a few games, but of course the whole social media era is rushing players' development. I'm not sure whether or not JJ McCarthy is like a good NFL player, but this whole rush to judgment on someone has to stop, I think. Unfortunately for one of my favorite QBs in the NFL, he took the loss this week as the Seahawks beat the Falcons 37-9. However, this is like why I always say you can't just look at the stats and determine how a player did. And I'm glad to see like a bunch of people on Twitter realize this. This week when it came to Kirk Cousins, both of his picks were on deflections like his team should have caught. Robinson had a big fumble on a potential scoring drive. And also Darnell Mooney had a touchdown pass that was called back. And Kirk really isn't working with much at receiver, especially with Drake London out. And I thought he looked pretty good, like as bad as his stats might show. Darnold kept things rolling for the Seahawks, of course, as that team keeps pace in the NFC West. Where speaking of which, Matthew Stafford and the Rams dominated the Cardinals 45-17. Stafford threw for 284 and had 3 more passing touchdowns in this one. And he had 2 beautiful passes to Puka Nacua. Kyron Williams had a rushing touchdown, and Blake Corum ran for 128 and 2 touchdowns of his own, as the Rams hold on to first place in that division. The Houston Texans improved to 8-5 with a win over the Chiefs 20-10, where it looks like the dynasty in Kansas City might be over. Once again, Mahomes' stats in this one weren't great, but I also can't put this all on him, as there was of course the Kelsey drop for an interception, Rashee Rice had a drop, and their O-line didn't hold up well against that amazing Texans defense. And that Texans D just like keeps it rolling with 3 picks in this one. On Monday night, in an ugly game from both QBs, the Chargers put out a win 22-19 over the Eagles. The suddenly reeling Eagles did not look good at all in this one as Hurts threw 4 picks. Their defense did like have a bunch of sacks, but this was an uncharacteristically bad game from Jalen Hurts. And Saquon Barkley actually finally looked good in this one as he ran for over 100 yards and also broke off a 50-plus yard run and had a touchdown in this game. And also the Broncos beat the Raiders 24-17, amid of course a lot of controversy on the whole final drive, and possibly some like sports betting allegations going on there. Anyways, now for some NBA talk. So to start things off here, I want to talk about 5 potential first-time All-Stars based on how they're playing up to this point in the season so far. So first up we have Jalen Johnson on the Hawks, who's been cooking, and it's taking yet like another massive leap in his game this year. He's been going for 30-point triple-doubles, and like he's currently averaging 23, 10, and 8 on 53% from the field. And he's just like 23 years old, so like he's definitely a rising star in this league. Number 2, we have Josh Giddey from the Bulls. He's currently averaging close to a triple-doubles, like he's putting up 29 and 9. And yes, the Bulls have like cooled off after that super hot start, but his level of play has still been very high. Number 3, I'm going with Denny Avdia on the Trailblazers. So his crazy stat line started up like the second half of last season, and like he's just like continued to get better into this year too. I think the Blazers saw his potential and just let him loose and like took the training wheels off. He's someone who could do it all, and like he's a super strong driver, but he's not only looking to score, is like he's currently averaging 26, 7, and 6, and he helps like keep his team competitive just about like every night. And the Blazers I think have like a really solid young core, which I think is only going to get better over time. Number 4, I could go with Jamal Murray, as he's definitely deserving of an all-star spot, and I do feel like he's been snubbed a bunch of times over the years. But for today, I want to discuss some of the more lesser-known ones. So I'm going with Jalen Duren, a really tough, physical, old-school basketball center on the Pistons. He's currently putting up 19 and 11 while shooting over 65% from the field. We'll see if he keeps it up. Like in the early part of the season, he's been looking really good for a super strong Pistons team. And number 5, had not been for Franz Wagner's injury, he probably would have made the list too. But I'm going with arguably my favorite one on this list, Austin Reeves. We saw it last year, and like his confidence just keeps going up. His skill set is really good, and like his bag is of course super deep. And he's been the Lakers' number 2 scoring option, and like even at times the number 1 option. And he hasn't showed any signs of slowing down. He can score at all levels, and like he creates for himself. And he's putting up 25 and 7 assists right now, while shooting 51% from the field. He's totally him, and I love watching him as a Lakers fan right now. Now one other story I want to talk about is the whole nonsense that was going around last week where everyone out there was saying like LeBron is washed. He's not washed, he was just like getting his rhythm back. Plus he's been playing through some foot stuff. But even last week, although like his 10-point streak ended, he still made the right play, had over 10 assists, and had the game-winning assist to Rui Hachimura, and he made the right play just like he's done like his whole career. I thought that was like somewhat poetic ending to the streak. Then of course the other night he has an amazing game against 76ers, as he went for 29 and had 10 straight points at one point in the fourth quarter. This appears to be like the same thing that we used to do with Tom Brady. He's not just gonna fall off a cliff. Yes, of course the mileage adds up and like all the years of play add up, but as far as I see it, he's someone who's gonna go out on his own terms. I mean, just last season LeBron averaged 25, 8, and 8. You don't just go from that to not being able to play anymore. So all the haters out there are gonna have to keep waiting. Also, like some brief baseball news, I saw like Edwin Diaz got traded to the Dodgers today. He left the Mets. How does he do that? That movie's really gonna cut deep amongst all Met fans, I know it. Especially my brother. And how the Dodgers just like keep getting better every year. That team just isn't fair. Anyways, that's your sports recap for the week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get back to end the video now. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed hearing all the topics. Let me know your thoughts on anything I spoke about in this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel. I will catch you guys next time. Thank you to all of you who've come along for the ride and getting to 100 episodes, and for all the encouragement I've felt along the way. I will catch you guys next time. Stay positive, stay hustling, stay grinding. Catch you next time. Peace.